Hello, everybody. Good day. This is Hazel Joy Baynosa, one of the reporters of the part 6 of the book of Introduction of Linguistics, which is about the application of linguistics. Here we are going to talk about the theories, the different theories and practices, and the relationship between these theories and practices in the application of linguistics. Okay. First, let us discuss all about the application of linguistics to the second language pedagogy. Okay, this is where theory meets practice. So foreign language or the second language, or we call it the L2 pedagogy, involves addressing key theoretical questions about language nature and L2 acquisition, as well as the practical questions about students and their language learning goals. So these answers shape classroom activities, the materials, and as well as teaching methodologies, where communicative language teaching is a prevalent approach in L2 pedagogy today. Looking ahead, this chapter will explore the theory-practice relationship in the 21st century and the challenges posed by English as a global lingua franca. So in the second language pedagogy, we have here imposed some methodologies, okay, through the different examples. So the first example we have here is the book all about practical French review, written by Barton and Searich of 1954. Okay, so wherein this book focuses more on grammar topics with lessons structured around grammar explanations, readings, comprehension questions, and translation exercises. Meanwhile, on the second example here, opposite to the practical French review is the Eastern Arabic, written by Rice said of 1966. So here in this book, it teaches colloquial Arabic through situational dialogues without explicit grammar explanations, emphasizing only on spoken language learning through mimicry and repetition. Now for here, the Claro Que Sí, okay, written by Garner, Rush, and Dominguez of 2008. So it is an introductory Spanish book for U.S. university students, incorporating listening, vocabulary, culture, and communicative grammar sections, emphasizing communication and social interaction in language learning. Okay, now these examples from different texts provide very different answers to the questions posed at the beginning of this chapter. So where students will gather information to build materials, authentic texts like that, just like what I said at the beginning of this chapter, and exemplify modified forms of three methodologies or approaches used in the L2 pedagogy in the last half century. So these methodologies namely are the grammar translation approach, the audiolingualism, and the communicative language teaching, or we call it the CLT. Okay, each had a very different starting point because of differing theoretical concepts of what language is and how language are learned. So, grammar translation, illustrated by the practical French book, took as a starting point language as discrete grammatical points and vocabulary items that are best learned through the medium of the language or the first language. Meanwhile, the audiolingual approach illustrated in the book Eastern Arabic took spoken language learning, was a process of habit formation best accomplished through imitation and repetition to eliminate the possibility of error. Okay. Meanwhile, in the Claro Que Sí, illustrates communicative language in the 20th century. So in CLT, or in the communicative language teaching, it is where language is conceptualized as not just a framework within the learners, but a communicative system that relies on use within a social context. Thus, Language here includes not just grammar or grammar rules or correct pronunciation, but the way in which individuals interact effectively with each other inside a classroom setting. Okay, now let's the communicative language teaching, or the CLT. So to give you just a preview of CLT, so communicative language teaching emerged in the late 1960s and early 1970s in Europe and in USA. So CLT is originated from the recognition of the increasing need for multilingualism in Europe and the growing access to educational opportunities in English globally. So it was developed as a response to the inadequacies of traditional language teaching methods in meeting the evolving language needs of individuals in a more interconnected world. Okay, so let's move to the sub-content of the CLT, which is about the theoretical basis and implications for practice of CLT. So communicative language teaching is grounded in the concept of language as communication rather than a purely grammatical system. In here, Delheims introduced the term communicative competence, emphasizing the appropriateness of language use in social context over mere grammatical correctness. CLT emphasizes language learning through social interaction and authentic communication, where students engage in tasks with communicative purposes. Therefore, the focus of the CLT is not just about the pronunciation, the grammar of the student, but how the student will apply the learnings on grammar and pronunciation in a more authentic setting or in a more authentic text for global competence or for a communicative competence. Okay, so the theoretical basis of CLT draw on concepts like comprehensible input, negotiation of meaning and output to facilitate language learning through interaction. Here, students are engaged more on interacting with each other rather than the teacher is teaching alone in the students through grammar. Okay, in CLT, the integration of the four language skills, mainly the speaking, listening, reading, and writing, is emphasized with a focus on speaking and listening as essential components of communication. So in CLT lessons, it involves a variety of activities that require students to use the target language authentically. Such activities are role plays, information sharing tasks, and experiential learning activities where students tend to talk with one another using the second language or interact with one another using what they learned in the lessons of grammar and pronunciation. Okay, so in here, two of the basic skills are reading and writing, where they are integrated into CLT lessons to support speaking and listening activities, reflecting the holistic nature of language as a communicative tool, where CLT lessons may include listening comprehension tasks like speaking activities, authentic reading exercises, and writing tasks that simulate real-life language use scenarios. So in a classroom where CLT is exposed, children or students are more likely to engage in activities where real-life scenarios are being held in a classroom setting for them to use real-life language use as well. Okay, this time we'll be talking about the CLT and the question of grammar. So there's a debate surrounding grammar instruction in communicative language teaching. A debate has been ongoing since its inception, with questions on whether grammar should be explicitly taught integrated into language content or left for acquisition through exposure. Some advocate for a focus on deeper language use knowledge over superficial grammar knowledge, emphasizing acquisition through comprehensible input without explicit grammar instruction. So, on one extreme, the natural approach by Krashen and Terrell promotes learning through exposure and minimal explicit grammar instruction with error correction through recasts. On the other extreme, the structural syllabus organizes teaching around predetermined grammar points using the presentation, practice, production, or the PPP method, where grammar is explicitly taught and errors are corrected during controlled practice phases. A middle ground approach integrates form-focused instruction within communicative activities, providing brief correction or explanation during tasks to enhance accuracy in language use. So, in this debate, scholars advocate for a blend of integrated and isolated form-focused instruction within CLT. This is where grammar instruction complements communicative activities to enhance language accuracy and fluency. Despite the ongoing debate, both teachers and students generally expect some form of grammar instruction in language courses, as evidenced by the prevalence of grammar-focused content in popular language textbooks. Okay, so now let's move to CLT applications of its content-based instruction and task-based instruction. So CLT applications on CBI and TBI. So we all know that when we say content-based instruction or CBI integrates language learning with subject content, where the focus is on the learning content such as culture, literature, or specific subjects using the foreign language as the medium of instruction. CBI emphasizes the use of authentic texts and language, tailoring the course to meet the specific needs of the students. Okay, so this is very evident in the educational system of the Philippines. This is where CBI has been widely used in various educational settings, including the K-12 immersion programs, bilingual education, and the tertiary education, with examples such as teaching business in French or anthropology in Japanese and some other parts of the world. The European Union promotes content and language integrated learning, or CLIL, where subjects like science, nursing, and business ethics are taught in English, aiming to enhance language proficiency alongside subject knowledge. Okay, so a CBI is also integrated in other subjects, okay, like math, science, and nursing and business subjects, but then the focus of the lesson is all about the grammar or the pronunciation or the fluency, the accuracy of the child rather than the subject being taught. Okay, it's just an integration to achieve the level of proficiency of the student. Meanwhile, on the other hand, when we say task-based instruction or TBI, it focuses on learning language through tasks, emphasizing language use as the primary goal of language. Okay, TBI distinguishes between the weak form that incorporates communicative tasks within CLIL and the strong form that structures the entire syllabus around tasks. TBI has gained popularity globally, with examples of its implementation in India, Flanders, Hong Kong, and China, emphasizing the importance of language use in learning. Okay, now let's move to the criticisms of CLT, CBI, and TBI. So critics of communicative language teaching raise concerns when it involves teaching a foreign language that is not used in the local environment, as it may not align with the cultural values and beliefs of the community adopting the method. CLT, with its emphasis on student-centered teaching, individualism, and creativity, may conflict with prevailing educational traditions and cultures, hindering its successful implementation in certain. Local teaching conditions, such as students sharing the same first language and lack of incentives for using the target language outside the classroom, can impede the effectiveness of CLT. Practical challenges such as large class sizes, differing concepts of student and teacher roles, and proficiency levels of teachers in the target language can also hinder the successful implementation of CLT. Okay, so in here, content-based instruction faces similar challenges with concerns about the integration of content and language, funding for professional development, and sustainability of programs when funding diminishes. Meanwhile, TBI or task-based instruction has been criticized for its underlying assumptions about language acquisition, the effectiveness of explicit grammar instruction, and the need for sufficient exposure to new language. Okay, so generally, critics question whether TBI provides enough exposure to new language, the training and commitment of teachers to implement TBI effectively, and the value of tasks for language learning in foreign language environments. So for these reasons, or for reasons such as this, critics consider the exclusive use of TBI in a foreign language environment to be inadequate. That being said, some of the criticisms of implementation can be offset if teachers themselves create a program to fit their local needs, and then after that pilot, monitor, and revise the program in response to input from teachers and students. That is according to the theory of McDonough and Chaikit-Monkol of 2007. To the post-methods era. Okay, so what happens in the post-methods era in the second language pedagogy? So the heyday of methods, according to Richards and Rogers of 2001, was the 1950s to 1980s, when correct use of a particular method or approach was thought to yield better results than using another method. Teachers can become cynical and are often frustrated with mandates to switch to a new magic bullet that does not address the complexities of their own particulars. So in the post-methods era, the literature of pedagogy has begun now to focus more on the teacher as a mediator of learning, a practitioner who is able to take a principled approach that is pragmatic and reflective. An example of this is Allwright's exploratory practice, where it encourages practicing teachers and the learners to explore puzzles in a classroom. So using puzzles, students and teachers will go hand in hand in the classroom. The teacher will help the student in the classroom with the ultimate goal of achieving deeper understanding of how students should work in a classroom, or we call it the classroom life. So, in the post-method era, the post-method condition is coined. So, when we say post-method condition, it is as a search for an alternative, as the confinement of a single set of practices inherent in adoption of a method. So, according to Bell of 2003, it links the post-method condition to postmodernism and a move from positivism to pragmatism, including an awareness of the need to adapt to changing contexts. Okay, aside from that, the success of a particular technique, lesson, or even a language course may well be boiled down to an individual's teacher's skill in the teaching craft, a skill that has little to do with a theory of language or second language acquisition. These are all part of the craft of teaching that can determine whether a language class is a success that results in student learning or a failure that creates frustration for all concerned. Therefore, what happened in the post-method era is that teacher has now his or her own way of teaching the student by knowing the student's personality, the student's attitude, the student's intelligence, to teach the appropriate the suitable method, the appropriate method for the student and how they are going to learn a specific language. It is not about all the theories or the standard practices. This is where now the teachers can have their own craft of teaching in order for the student to reach the goal of success in learning a language. So in the post-method era, the teacher can now assess his or her own teaching skill, whether a student can learn a language in a class or has a failure in creating to teach the language in the class. Now let's move to the relationship between theory and practice. So what is the relationship between theory when it is applied to a practice? A teacher should resist expert advice that does not align with their experience, and researchers should tailor their work to be more applicable to individual teachers. Dialogue between researchers and teachers is essential, with teachers being informed by research findings and researchers listening to teachers' insights. Therefore, the relationship between theory and practice is where the experts coined all the theories should have a dialogue to the teachers who are going to implement the theories into practice. Moreover, key findings from second language acquisition research, such as the effectiveness of group work, comprehensible input, focus on form, and sustained error correction, can directly impact classroom teaching practices. Making research more accessible to teachers and addressing their concerns about vocabulary acquisition, grammar learning, and motivation can enhance language teaching practices and student engagement. So it is very important that the teachers have their conversation with the experts who have discovered all the theories in order for them to practice the appropriate theories in a different or in a various students in one classroom setting. Now let's move to the second to the last part of the second language pedagogy, which is considering English as lingua franca, a challenge. So English as a lingua franca, or we call it ELF, has seen rapid growth globally, with non-native speakers outnumbering native speakers by 3 to 4 to 1, leading to a shift in language norms and usage. ELF users communicate with other non-native speakers in various domains, leading to the development of localized varieties like Euro-English and China English, which deviate from traditional native speaker norms. That means non-native speakers of English nowadays are challenged enough to speak with the native speakers of English, and that became a challenge to them, and by that challenge it became the norm of the native speaker to talk with the non-native speakers of English. The concept of ELF challenges the idea of language ownership by native speakers, emphasizing a fluid and negotiated form of language that adapts to the needs of the speakers in each situation. Non-native speakers, like teachers, play a crucial role in ELF education, offering unique perspectives, understanding learners' challenges, and serving as the cultural and linguistic mediators. Teaching ELF requires setting appropriate goals, presenting models of competent L2 use, incorporating students' L1, and focusing on communication strategies rather than linguistic form. So the goal of teaching English as a lingua franca is very challenging, especially to the part of the teachers. It is where integrating the second language acquisition to their native language, and that has been a challenge over a year now, or over centuries now. Now, before I proceed to the next application of linguistics to another content, let us first think about what does the future hold on the second language pedagogy. Media supplements traditional language learning methods, enhancing the learning experience through diverse resources. Technology enables distance learning and access to authentic language materials, fostering interactive online communication among students. Challenges persist in foreign language education with low enrollments in advanced language courses in English speaking countries. So, this is much applicable, especially to the online world of teaching, where there are many online platforms today in education. Um, to name a few, we have 51Talk, Wibleo. These are online platforms in education where non-native speakers of English teach second language to another non-native speakers of English. And as we have observed, this is a very challenging moment in learning English or a second language acquisition. So, what does the future hold? By the emergence of technology, I guess we can be able to teach one another English as our lingua franca. So, another implication is that there would be a decline in language instruction, where it is observed in the USA, raising concerns about the lack of emphasis on language learning in schools. In Europe, a more optimistic outlook on language learning is noted, with a significant percentage of individuals able to converse in non-native language. Socio-political factors such as the teacher quality and students' attitudes influencing the success of language education alongside technological advancements. So, the success of ELTO pedagogy can rest on factors such as the congruence of a teacher's theoretical understanding of language, second language acquisition, and practice within the classroom. Yet there are socio-political concerns, such as mentioned in this one. The wider the socio-cultural context within which teaching takes place may have a far-reaching effect on the extent to which success is possible. The next content of application of linguistics, that is the educational linguistics. Educational linguistics explores how language is learned, taught, and used in educational settings. It delves into the impact of language on teaching methods, curriculum development, and student learning outcomes. By studying the relationship between language and education, educational linguistics aims to improve language instruction, enhance communication skills, and create inclusive learning environments for diverse learners. So let's dive deeper into the educational linguistics. First, let's talk about the applied linguistics and the theories of language. Educational linguistics is a branch of applied linguistics, varies based on theories of language and language acquisition. Theories differ in views on the relationship between language structure and function, discourse, pragmatics, and the biological basis of language acquisition. Functional theories emphasize the close match between language structure and function, viewing discourse and pragmatics as fundamental. So, generativist theories see language structure as relatively autonomous from function, emphasizing syntax and logical form. There is a debate between functional and generativist theories, where it impacts educational practices, such as progressive pedagogies, emphasizing immersion versus direct instruction in language acquisition. So generative linguists argue for a biological basis for language acquisition, highlighting the innate human ability to acquire language compared to other subjects like physics or literacy. The need for coherent instructional guidance in literacy education is emphasized, balancing biological factors with effective teaching strategies. Next is the social languages. So in social languages, Children learn various social languages beyond their native language, including school-based language, technical language, example given is a video game modding, and media production language. Social languages involve mapping language resources to specific social contexts, shaping distinctive grammatical and discourse features. Different social groups develop unique social languages for specific tasks and practices, such as physicists, gang members, and medical professionals. So, in social languages, it is learned through social conventions and cultural practices, emphasizing the importance of understanding and using language for specific social functions. The distinction between professional and popular science writing showcases how language varies based on context, with professional language focusing on methodology and theory, while popular language emphasizes storytelling and observation. Is equity. So equity is having equal opportunities among our students in classroom setting. So in here, disparities in academic performance between children from different socioeconomic backgrounds are influenced by early socialization experiences at home. The number of words a child hears and their oral vocabulary at age 5 correlate with later academic success. Gaps in education between rich and poor highlight the importance of understanding the nuance, meaning of language in different contexts. That is how equity is shown in educational linguistics. Embedded cognition theory suggests that individuals derive meaning from language based on their experiences. According to Vygotsky's concepts, the spontaneous and non-spontaneous concepts emphasizes collaborative learning and overt instruction to develop reflective understanding and conscious control over concepts. Vygotsky emphasizes the need for focused instruction on words, relationship, and reflective thinking to enhance learning. Next is the language out of school. Children may lack exposure to school-based language practices at home, posing challenges when they start school. Despite this, many children bring valuable verbal practices from their home environments that can benefit their learning. Schools should recognize and utilize the diverse linguistic practices students bring to enhance their educational experience. As for example, the African American vernacular English and rich storytelling abilities some children bring to school are examples of valuable linguistic diversity. Acknowledging and respecting diverse language styles can improve educational outcomes and foster inclusivity in the classroom. Next is linguistic microanalysis. So educational linguists focus on how language form and meaning interact in educational contexts, impacting empowerment and disempowerment. Even minor details in language can have significant implications in communication and must be considered in linguistics. Linguistic microanalysis involves examining specific language details in interactions, such as the pitch, stress, and tone units. Misunderstandings in interactions can arise from differences in linguistic practices and assumptions about communication styles. Attention to linguistic nuances is crucial in educational settings to avoid misinterpretations and promote effective communication. Next is, to conclude everything from the educational linguistic, immersion in school-based social languages and literacy is essential for children's learning, but teachers need to supplement it with explicit language instruction. It is not good that the students are learning on their own at the first stance or at the first level of their learning the English language. But as they learn throughout the levels, teachers need to give them explicit instruction or language instruction. Focusing on social languages and genres of learning promotes conscious control and meta-awareness, reshaping students' understanding of language and Schools should recognize and build upon the linguistic resources of children from diverse backgrounds, honoring their unique language styles and fostering appreciation for linguistic variation. Misunderstandings in communication with students often stem from their culture and from their linguistic differences, highlighting the need for teacher training in language and linguistics. Teachers should engage in research on their students in classrooms to better understand diverse linguistic backgrounds and enhance communication in educational setting. Okay, the next application of linguistic is linguistics to reading, or linguistics in relationship to reading. Now, this chapter explores reading, focusing on how proficient readers quickly identify words and effective teaching methods for children. It delves into the cognitive processes of skilled reading and its impact on intellectual and linguistic abilities, drawing insights from diverse disciplines like cognitive psychology and education. The research on reading spans various languages, highlighting its theoretical and practical importance for education and cognitive development. Now let's dig deeper to the bottom-up and the top-down processing in reading. So we are very familiar with the bottom-up and top-down process in reading. So reading involves bottom-up processes, meaning taking in information from the text, and top-down processes, which is guided by prior knowledge and expectations, working together for efficient comprehension. Theories of reading differ in their emphasis on bottom-up, extracting information systematically, and top-down processing, which is forming hypotheses based on So one of the important aspects in reading is the eye movement. So eye movement studies show skilled readers fixate on most words, processing visual information thoroughly, contradicting the top-down view of skipping words based on predictions. Good and poor readers use context similarly, challenging the notion that guessing ability differentiates reading proficiency, highlighting the importance of both bottom-up and top-down processes in reading comprehension. So meanwhile, contextual predictability influences reading speed, though with predictable words fixated for less time, suggesting a balance between higher-order thinking skills and low-level associative processes. Next is the word recognition. So in reading, it involves the bottom-up and top-down processes, where prior knowledge guides comprehension alongside extracting information from the text. So you see the relationship between the bottom-up and top-down processes in reading. So written words map onto speech with different writing systems reflecting the sounds through logographic, syllabic, or alphabetic principles. Skilled readers recognize words by linking print to speech sounds, with eye movement studies revealing fixation and rapid jumps during reading. So a skilled reader, usually link the sound they know to the print material they see on the text. So good and poor readers use context similarly, challenging the idea that guessing ability differentiates reading proficiency. The spelling to sound translation process involves explicit rules or implicit connections, with dual route models suggesting lexical and non-lexical routes for word recognition. Next is learning to read. So from word recognition, this is not a time the student will learn how to read a word. Two main approaches to teaching reading include the whole language approach, which is focusing on meaning and context, and phonics, of course the sound, emphasizing bottom-up processing of letters and sounds. Whole language instruction emphasizes comprehension through context and meaning, with, of course, minimal emphasis on phonics and individual letter-sound relation. Phonics instruction, on the other hand, focuses on decoding individual letters and sounds, promoting explicit instruction in converting printed words into spoken words. So, it involves phonemic awareness, the ability to recognize and manipulate individual sounds in words is crucial for reading success and is often a challenge for some children. Integrating phonemic awareness instruction with reading activities enhances children's understanding of sound-letter relationships. Next is learning to spell. So after the children learns to read, it is a theory that children cannot spell the word. So whole language programs often emphasize writing over spelling, encouraging children to write daily in personal journals with minimal focus on correct spelling. Invented spellings, where children create their own spellings for unfamiliar words, are common in whole language classrooms, with the belief that conventional spelling will develop naturally as children learn to read first. Research indicates that children are less likely to learn spellings from connected text compared to studying isolated words, highlighting the importance of explicit spelling instruction. Spelling instruction not only improves spelling skills, but also enhances reading and phonemic awareness by helping children analyze phonemes or sound of the words within the words and understand spelling patterns afterwards. Effective spelling instruction requires teachers who understand children's spelling errors and the underlying reasons behind them, enabling targeted support for spelling development. Next, the factor affecting students learning how to read or how to spell is what we call the dyslexia. So is dyslexia affecting students how to read? So dyslexia is a learning difficulty characterized by poor reading and spelling skills despite adequate oral language comprehension. Contrary to popular belief, dyslexia is not primarily about seeing letters or words backward, because according to what we know, when a child has dyslexia, she can see the letters in a word but is written backward pattern. Dyslexia is a linguistic problem related to difficulties in phonological awareness. So dyslexia happens if a child doesn't know the sound of the letter. That is why, as if we are going to observe a child who has dyslexia, for our notion, he or she can see the letters of the word in background pattern, but it's not. It's a linguistic problem which is related to the phonological awareness of the child. Therefore, the child doesn't know how the letter should the sound. I mean, the child doesn't know the sound of the letter before he or she knows the pattern of each letter. Dyslexics struggle with the phonological structure of spoken language, impacting their ability to understand how sounds correspond to written letters in alphabetic systems. Dyslexia is partly genetically based, with identical twins showing a higher likelihood of sharing reading difficulties. So effective remediation for dyslexia involves intensive reading programs focusing first on phonics or of the sound first to address phonological weaknesses and improve reading and spelling skills. So before you teach the child that's dyslexic or a child who has dyslexia, you need first to let them be aware or to expose him or her to sound first before you expose her or him to the letter and later on to reading. So phonics first, the sound first of the letter. Next is the effects of literacy. Literacy has cognitive consequences, with research showing that extensive reading leads to larger vocabularies and increased knowledge about the world. Opportunities to learn new words are more prevalent during reading compared to other activities like watching television or engaging in everyday. Learning to read enhances awareness of language phonemes, with per-literate individuals and alphabetically illiterate adults struggling in tasks requiring access to the phonemic structure of language. Alphabetic literacy influences people's perceptions of language sounds, shaping their conceptualization of sounds based on spelling patterns in words. Knowledge of written language can influence ideas about spoken language, highlighting the interconnectedness of written and spoken language in shaping cognitive processes and linguistic understanding. Okay, so for this third application of linguistics, to conclude everything that's been said on my report and its future directions. The study of written language processing is valuable and informative, challenging the notion that spoken language should be the primary focus of linguistic investigations. Understanding how individuals relate print to speech and how children can effectively learn this connection is an important area of language study with practice. Written language has a significant impact on the representation of spoken language, highlighting, of course, the importance of studying writing within linguistics. An emerging area of research focuses on the brain basis of reading, exploring how brain activation patterns differ in individuals with reading difficulties and how they change with cross-linguistic studies of reading and spelling in various alphabetic writing systems are gaining attention, aiming to develop theories that are not limited to specific languages. Moreover, strengthening the connection between research and education is crucial, ensuring that teaching practices are evidence-based and informed by scientific research to improve literacy instruction effectiveness. So that's all for today. Those are about the first three application of linguistics. So actually there are six, and the other three will be discussed by my partner, Ma'am Roslyn Barastas, on her report in the continuation of my report. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something today. Thank you so much.